Hi everybody, thank you so much for your support of the Cosmic Chats, for your attention and your energy, and just being a part of each episode. It makes all the difference. So if you haven't subscribed before, please consider doing so. The more subscribers that we can get, the wider the net that we can cast, and the more and more people that we can bring in to share their insights, consciousness, and wisdom, and reveal that in the universe for all of us. So thank you so much and have a great day. Hi everyone, and welcome to this Cosmic Chat with Debbie Sugarbaker. I am so excited to be here with you today, this evening, wherever you are on the planet, and to welcome my friend Yonatan Langer, who has an incredible story of transformation. He grew up in a neo-Nazi group in West Germany, as you can read in the bio below the flyer for this chat, and he's just transformed himself and his life in such a beautiful way. And the wisdom that he has to share is so powerful, because each one of us has things in our life, darknesses within us that we want to transform and become a different person. So I'm going to add Yonatan, and we will get started right away. Thank you so much to everyone who is joining. It's going to be such a powerful event. I feel like it's an event. Welcome to everybody who's joining. We're going to hear this incredible story. And Yonatan, hi Yonatan.
Hi Debbie.
So
Hi.
To see you this evening. We're both in Israel right now. And I'm so excited to have you here. We have several people who are joining, and I'm sure that many more will join us on the replay. So for this powerful...
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So I did share a little bit about your bio in below the flyer for this chat, but I wondered if maybe you could give us just a little bit of the background story before we dive into some of the deeper spiritual concepts that people can apply to their lives and really take from your story to inspire and create change for themselves. So maybe you can just give us a short, background of what we're going to be delving into.
Yeah, happy to. So I grew up in Germany. I have one brother, a regular family, and my parents basically wanted me to be off the street, to do some sport, and to be focused on building something good in my life. And because my father was also a sportsman, and so I joined first a gymnastics club, and then later at 12 years age, I started to do karate, and that was in Berlin. And at some point, 2 years into doing karate, we were in a training camp, and one of the teammates brought some music, and we started to listen to the music, and it happens to be neo-Nazi music. And so I joined karate simply to do karate, and because I liked sport. But obviously you make friends, and you hang out together, and you find same interests. And like when we were in the training camp, we didn't think about that this music could influence our life in such a way that it eventually became building a neo-Nazi group. And so it started with some simple music, and we liked the text. It was the time of the CDs, where you make copies of it, and
burning CDs.
Burning CDs, exactly. Covering like copies of the cover, and yeah, the old times.
Another time, the whole flashback.
Yeah, and so this led from listening to music, obviously, like repeating the songs and memorizing them, to getting to know the stores where you can buy them, or going to parties where you meet other people that listening to the music, then meeting other groups, and then hanging out more together because the music is so standing out in your life, and it's so different than the normal people are living their life, that you build your own group, then you build a clubhouse, then you invite other groups into the clubhouse, and then suddenly you basically build a group with a very negative mindset and very much like separated from society.
Wow.
Yeah.
So fascinating how the road took you, you know, because it's seemingly like so by chance and innocent, and start with music, and you know, and having a sense of camaraderie and feeling a sense of belonging, you know, things
Right.
that, you know, if you go into the pyramid of human needs, those are the things that people need. So it's, you know, Maslow, I believe, said that there's a sense of belonging, you know, there's all these needs that we have as human beings. So it's interesting how the group
Yeah.
formed. But like you said, so it ended up being very isolating, and you kind of had this mentality of us versus them, right? As I understand.
Yeah. So we were always thinking that we were not brainwashed in a way from society, and we were like standing out in a way. We were preserving something that needs to be protected, you know, the German race in a way, or the German mindset, and which is so opposite of what is reality in a way, you know, like, because we were isolating ourselves also from all the challenges. So we were isolating ourselves from growth, because we were hiding in this group, and we were kind of shoulder tapping each one of us that we're cool people, strong people, etc., and that we didn't expose ourselves to any challenges in life. And because we didn't have any contact with foreigners, we wanted it to be far away from us as possible. And we were teenagers. Some of us were 10 years older, so they were in their mid-20s or something. But we were relatively young, and we all, I think we all choose like kind of a protection mode, not to be exposed to any challenges. The opposite that I'm doing now, in a way.
The opposite than you're doing now. Yeah. And it's interesting how you were kind of externally focused, like focused on the group and giving each other energy. I mean, there's really a sense that you come into, I believe, something very important about coming in and becoming maybe more of a spiritual person, more of a centered person, a person who can really love others because they love themselves, means that you have to have a relationship with yourself, which is quite an internal journey, rather than one
Right.
that's completely receiving, you know, the energy from the outside.
Right, and also it requires responsibility in a big scale, because before it was very much centered, also like focused outside, that we were blaming other people and circumstances for our misfortune, or that our goals were not met. You know, so foreigners were the cause that Germany wasn't in the right place, or like what need to be fixed outside. We never took the responsibility for ourselves. Which, when you see, when you look at these people, it's like basically a very low level of spirituality, right?
Yeah.
It's
Or
basically not existing.
spirituality at all, right?
Yeah.
Spirituality
So
supposes that there's a connection between all beings that kind of surpasses the physical world that we're in, right? It acknowledges
right,
the connection between, even with us and nature, even with an individual, like there's a divine life force, there's something that connects all beings, no matter where we come from, what we look like, how we pray, what our religion is, background, gender, etc. You know, a sense of spirituality in at least as I understand it and the way that I see it, is that you acknowledge that there is something that connects all of us to one another. So what you're saying is basically there wasn't that at all.
yeah, when you look at the music, for example, the neo-Nazi music, it's based on hatred and anger. So it's based on all the groups that need to be erased, or like, you know, like dealt with in a way, about like who to kill, or who to bomb, or who to threaten, and you know, so it's and like idolizing warriors and soldiers of the Second World War. So which is, when I'm looking at it now, it's very tough to read these texts. Back then I believed them. Back then I sang them. I knew all the lyrics. So, but it's actually, it's really very much detached from yourself and detached from anything around it, you know, and then building the strength to push for your beliefs, for your idealization. Like, you know, like you build a mindset about how you see the world, what you want to achieve by all this violence, and then you're building there your strength in it to go for it. And at some point you realize it's all yes, right? It's all nothing. And you have to start building yourself. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges of people that want to leave these groups, that at some point they have to understand that it was a false belief. Right. What we're all going through, right? When we are facing ego, when we are joining the negative side, when we are thinking about ourselves alone, at some point we need to understand it was a false belief. And we need to be able to shift this. So,
wow, it's so incredibly, I mean, it's so crazy to hear it from somebody who's been through it, you know, because it's kind of like, and you were so young with this mind that's so malleable and looking for a way in life. And it just, I mean, I'm sure that people study this and they study the psychology of it and the psychology of groups. And you know, they spend probably lifetimes writing stuff about this. But it's just fascinating because I know, you know, there's so many hate groups around the world, and it's crazy to become aware of it and just how they work on the minds and spirits of young people who perhaps are just looking for something, for a way of what we're do here. But I wanted to kind of move forward now into your next chapter. What was it that brought you to a different path? Now it's like so interesting because you kind of went from one way to another way, right? Completely. And I'm interested to know what brought you to the path that you're on now.
Yeah. So basically I was 10 years in the group, and I was in a leading position there. You know, I was influencing the group. I was pushing the group forward, and I was mid-20 when I also went to the army in Germany and went to study. And this was the time when I got exposed to people that I wouldn't be exposed to. So I was studying with strangers that were more integrated in society, or that had background in like immigration or something to Germany. And then I got to know them for real. Before I had an opinion about them, but then I got to know them for real, and it brought to me a lot of challenges, because suddenly I had to realize that they're cool, or they're funny, or we have something in common. And I was in this conflict of my ideology and like what I saw in real life. And slowly I started to build a desire that I wanted to find out more, what is life really about. So back then my ex-girlfriend, was reading like spirituality, and I got interested in it. And like I was in university, like hanging out with other people, and where I was hiding my beliefs all the time. And then all these factors together, they made me search for some answers to my questions of life. And is this ideology really true? And do we really have to hate? And like I was playing it out. So what do? We start a war now? What is this, you know? But all the spirituality that I found wasn't like deep and strong, and didn't touch me in my core essence, until I found Kabbalah. And when I found Kabbalah, it resonated with me. It challenged me, but it resonated with me. It pushed me in a big time. And for some reason, I felt this has essence of truth and could explain me a lot of things. Because when you are in this point of ideology and like wrong perception about life and the world, you're very much detached from your soul. You're doing actions that your soul doesn't like. You're doing you have beliefs that you know they are not true, but you need to learn what is true. And Kabbalah gave a lot of answers, because Kabbalah is not just doing something and believing it, but it's asking why and understanding and like finding the connection, and then making choices and using your free will. And that helped me. So it was always then a battle between, I don't like this, but I think this is the true path, and I have to deal with it, you know?
Right. There's one thing that Kabbalah really does, and I think many spiritual paths do, is that they connect the individual, like you said, with an aspect of yourself that's kind of beyond, that's very internal, like that's your soul. That's, you build that inner connection, and then you end up, because your soul is connected to every other being, so then you become more sensitive to other people, more empathetic, more sensitive to nature, more sensitive to, you know, the birds outside and the trees. You build that connection, which is an inner connection, but because we're all connected, so you also become more aware of things that perhaps you weren't aware of before. And if you start experiencing that, then it's hard to like just stay in these belief systems of the mind, you know, the head is, because your experience of and vibrationally, like what you're connected to, something so much bigger. I find it fascinating. I feel like you've had quite a journey in life, not only, you know, physically, and now you're living in a different country and you're practicing a religion and you're practicing a spirituality and a whole path, but you've also come so far, like crossing basically a sea of consciousness and of energy.
Right. What came to my mind is, maybe some people have seen it in Facebook or somewhere online, is these dogs that got traumatized, you know, that are very angry dogs that are barking a lot, and they're very angry and very disconnected from love and stuff, until they find their path and they find their inner truth, and they start to trust again, and they start to believe, and they start to open up, and they start to enjoy life, and they start to connect to themselves and love, and then they are themselves. And it feels pretty much like it, because I hated a lot of things around me, and I wasn't really connected to myself. And Kabbalah brought me this, like brought all this wisdom and this power and this energy to reconnect to myself, and to find out who I am, and like what is inside, what is the soul that is inside.
Wow.
And
such a beautiful analogy, you know, the dog. This
yeah,
because it's so true. What they're lacking is, like, you know, they just want a home and love and
right.
routine and like the basic things, you know. I wish that I had kind of done more research and gone back to, like, you know, looked into the Maslow's pyramid of needs, of human needs, because it would be so interesting to just kind of like look at this through that lens. Um, but yes, I mean, love is, it sounds like so cheesy and everything, but we know it's true. You know, love can open up hearts, can open up, you know, the energy centers in the body, can just be kind of like this magical elixir that can take a person from one reality into a completely different reality, and yet they'll look and stay the same on the outside. That I've know, having been like kind of like deeply involved in spiritual things or following different paths, you know, even like delving into like the Kundalini and, you know, these traditions where you actually, you kind of start experiencing reality in a different way, because you understand anything that comes into your way, and then it brings up, you know, you feel triggered or you feel something inside this, that everything is, you can be literally like experiencing reality in a completely different way. I mean, it's true on all levels than the person next to you who reacting to what's happening and blaming the other person and feeling, like a victim. And I'm not saying that we're all perfect once we path, because I can tell myself that I've been dealing, recently, and this is something that we spoke about with constantly like having, a pattern, like kind of always being in this like victim position and not really completely empowered in my interactions, or there's just something in my vibration that kind of like goes there as a safety place because it's familiar, like somewhere where I don't want to assert responsibility or something like that. So anyway, it's just, that was just a bunch of points in one, that we can be living in universes yet being right next to each other, that each one of us has so much power to create our reality and decide which universe we want to live in, and to inform ourselves and learn more about, spiritual concepts, and build ourselves, a universe where we feel connected to other beings and connected to ourselves. And then the point that none of us are perfect, and we all have these things that we're working on to overcome. For you had to overcome a lot, like you said, like a lot of hatred and feeling isolated and, kind of getting stuck in this ideology, which is just an ego, all of this. But each one of us has our own cages, our own egos that we need to overcome, our own fears, which can, feel very isolating in themselves. And that's why I'm so passionate about bringing people spiritual tools and spiritual consciousness, and even if it's not necessarily spiritual, just anything to kind of help them to open those cages and to remember who we really are, who they really are, the deepest level.
Right. We all agree that love is like where it leads to, right? The question is like, we all agree on it, but we are not there, and we have so many gaps to bridge. So what I noticed in my journey is that, like, when I was like so much in this ideology, in this negativity and darkness, I really like this, and that's what we all do. We like our darkness, we like our ego. We have a safe place to go to.
Right.
How to break out from that, and how to go into love, is to find a better reason to not do it.
Right.
Because it was very comfortable to be angry about people around it, or to be aggressive, or anything. But I had to realize that I was only the effect of these situations. I was the effect of foreigners, of my opinion about the foreigners and whatever. So I was never the cause. And so I had to find the motivation why to say no to this ego, and why no to this mindset that I had in this group, and to go through this painful process, because changing from ego to love is a very painful process to overcome it and to let it go. And we have to find their motivation. Why to do it?
Right. Totally. And it's interesting because something that you and I had spoke about last week when I met you was this idea that it's not that you needed to delete yourself or where you came from or your process that brought you to who you are today, or the hatred, right? Can we eliminate those things? Is it about elimination of those parts of ourselves, or is it about transformation into another? I would just like you to speak on that a little bit.
So, like, the Kabbalists say that any desire, and even if it's a very, very selfish desire, has an equivalent counterpart that is very, very positive. So whenever we are using energy or for ourselves alone, that's what the Kabbalists say. When we always thinking about ourselves, then we're using this energy that comes to us only for us. We are only thinking about ourselves. But when we learn to turn this around, so for example, hatred, when we're a hateful person, this is the starting point of our true vessel. So we don't need to hate this vessel that we are now full of hatred and full of anger or full of aggression. It's not the problem. You only have to learn how to turn it around to this person. Basically, when he's very negative, he's a huge channel. He's a huge vessel. The only problem he has is that he's thinking only about himself. So instead of hating this ego and trying to eliminate it, is to learn to turn it around, to make the shift, to receive this energy, to share it with the world. So a person that is full of hatred, once he learns to use this energy and to turn it around, he will be full of love. He will be the biggest vessel for love. Because like if a person doesn't have this desire for hatred, doesn't have this desire for negativity, he has a small capacity. So a person with a bigger capacity has also a bigger challenge. And many times we are trying to erase the challenge. We are trying to say, no, but we are so self-criticizing. It's not good and we shouldn't do that. No, it's okay. It's our starting point.
I mean, obviously, like, I hear what you're saying, but if the person is like, in a hate group and they're causing destruction in the world, then, it is a problem. Yet at the same time, it is a big problem, right? But at the same time, we can understand that there's a polarity in the universe, and and when you're looking at yourself and looking at your own transformation, you can understand that as dark as you can go is as light as you can go, because there's, for every reaction, there's an equal every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right?
And we don't need to see the ego as a problem. We don't need to see, no, because I'm so negative, because I have this ego, I'm limited in life, or I need to work on eliminating this ego. No, we don't need to eliminate it. We just need to learn how to transform it, how to turn it around. And then this is actually the reason why we become great.
Right.
It's not the problem. It's like the reason why we become great. All we need is a big enough desire to say in the moment when we want to become negative, to find a bigger enough reason to turn it around and to be positive.
Right. It's so powerful because there's like a concept, there's an understanding that you come to, something that's very necessary for, for any type of growth, I believe. Having been a teacher, I know that, just from my experience in life, I know that you have to kind of come to a place where you believe in the goodness of yourself. Perhaps it's from working on yourself, from learning how to go outside of yourself and connect with other people, from feeling your oneness with nature, just kind of moving into a different space. And then from that place, from recognizing that there's goodness within yourself, it's much easier to change and much easier to tackle those things and to transform those things that, that you want to. Because this, like, shame, I think that this is kind of like what you're speaking of. Shame can be like a big block, but if you understand, my essence, part of the creator, right? So it's inherently good, and I have that goodness within inside of me. It's easier to make the change than getting stuck in shame. Like, I'll always be, if I made a mistake 15 years ago, you hold on to it and kind of not allow yourself to move forward or to get out of that. Understand that that's not you. There's an idea of wearing, and now we're talking about one being in a process of spiritual growth, of not wearing or negativity as if it's, or understanding that it's not you,
Right.
One of the part of something much greater. And yes, we have these smallnesses, these places where we're very limited, and we have ego and negativity and self-hatred and criticism, etc. But we are, by connecting to that innate sense that I'm good inside, so much more.
Right. But I need to add from my journey that I came from a background with no belief in the Creator, I was an atheist. I didn't believe in God, the light, or any source like this, and so no religious background also, and I was so far away from believing that there is a source that is good. And this is, I think, what we all do in the ego. When we are acting, when we look at our ego, whatever it is, it's self-judgment, it's shame, it's anger, it's hatred, whatever it is, we don't believe in this area that there's a source of good for it, or in it, or in this situation. And what I learned in my transformation from like from leaving the group to starting to study Kabbalah to eventually wanting to convert to Judaism is that I had to first admit that I have this ego. It was the first stage. It was far later that I found out that the reason of the ego is something positive and something sharing, something good, and something that all unites us, and that after it transforms the ego is its beauty, its love. But in the beginning, it was just to admit, no, it is there. The ego is there. I have this issue. I have this problem. I have this negativity. And then to start to build a desire that is big enough to turn it around. First, I had to admit that it's there. So this was like, it was way later that I realized it has this beauty, this wholeness, the love, and that's what we see in many teachings and concepts, that we first have to look at it, you know, and that's what where we mostly afraid of, that we're saying, no, we're looking at it eye to eye. This is the issue, but
Right.
the issue is not the reason of bad circumstances or bad life or bad luck or whatever it is. No, this is the issue. This is my starting point. This is why I came in this world. This is what is the reason that I want to transform something in my life. This will be the reason why I will be successful. The reason why I'm successful and full of light and whatever later on is because I have this and this and this issue. And this, we first need to look into the eye. We first have to see this ego will be the reason why I'm going to be successful, why I'm going to turn things around.
Yeah, it's true. You know, those sometimes I recently heard someone else telling a story. You know, if a person is, you know, you kind of, if you constantly feel like the victim, which, you know, in different situations, like maybe you're in relationship dynamics where you kind of get bullied, or maybe it was in school or whatever, eventually that person has a huge capacity to become very like victorious, and they're empowered in themselves. You know, the things where we feel like we're lacking, we can actually become empowered in the opposite. So I wanted to just move on. I had a few things. So what sustains you in hard moments in these days? Like, do you ever find that, first of all, you've never looked back, I can imagine you've never looked back, right? But what sustains you to move forward in moments where it feels really hard? Like, you must feel sometimes like, can I really do this? Can I really continue? Because I think that we all feel that when we're on a path of doing something that's beautiful and great in the world, we come up against aspects of ourselves that would rather, you know, stay small, etc. So what is it that sustains you and brings you forward in those hard moments?
Yeah, I experienced it a lot. Like my journey started 13 years ago, and from day one, I had this understanding that Kabbalah gives me great understanding and great wisdom and great tools. But in the same time, I had to face a lot of challenges, and mostly by myself, because I couldn't speak with the neo-Nazi group that I'm now going to Kabbalah and to Jewish people to learn about how to be a better person. And also in the beginning, I was not so open to speak about my past, also with other students in the Kabbalah Center. And so, and my parents also didn't know about it for many years that I was in this group. I was hiding it. So it was a challenge with me and what I called later the creator. And I think I always had this desire just to survive in a way. I had this desire to find a solution. I never stopped searching. And these challenges, they came very unexpected all the time. Sometimes after a big breakthrough, the next day you would expect, wow, you're flying on clouds and you see everything is beautiful. But then hits a very big challenge because the creator has a plan for us. The creator has a plan and wants us to get to a certain point. But we see it from our perspective of our dream world, how we want to have it lightly, on how everything needs to fall into place and how everything needs to happen in certain stages. But the creator gives us these challenges, or we see it in the beginning as challenges, just to grow there. And the challenge mostly hits when you don't have any power, when you don't have any hope, when you don't see any results, when things are not going your way, when certain things are suddenly unfair, when people speaking are not believing in you, and you feel like, how can I handle all this? Like, who's the help? Where's the help? What do I do now? What is in the next stage? What do I have to do? Can someone tell me what I have to do now? And everything was new. It was basically a path that I had to walk into the unknown, into something that I didn't know. After leaving the group, there were my family. I didn't know where I'm going to. I didn't understand all this inclusive behavior and openness and everything. So I constantly didn't understand, but had the desire just to find it out. I wanted to search. And so I always trained myself to get up again, like a boxer that gets knocked down. He's on the floor. The referee counts already until 9, and he stands up and he does the next round. So that's kind of my motivation, that I know. Also, I trained my mind that when I look forward in 10 years, I most likely will be able to handle more than in the past. So when I will be able to handle more in the future, then the current situation can't be so difficult. I just don't have the vessel for it. So, and the whole concept of that Kabbalah explains us how this world operates, how light enters a vessel, how we are a vessel for light, how our capacity can grow, how surrounding light, which is skills that we didn't mention.
Like, these are terms that people may not be familiar with, vessel and light.
Right.
I just want to explain that it's like kind of like a spiritual terms that explain how one can how we receive energy and grow energy and share energy in this world. It's kind of a deeper concepts, but I think that people can understand, that a vessel is kind of like your capacity for love, your capacity, like you said, the dog who just comes in off the street and he's been, abused, and he didn't have a place to live, and he was, with the other stray dogs, and they were fighting for food. So he comes in. So at first he's not going to be able to receive so much, he's just going to love and comfort and care. You start slowly with those, with an animal like that, and slowly he gains the strength and the ability to handle more love, and then to give more love. You often see it, that then they become warm, and they have like the biggest hearts, and they're the best ever. But that's like such a process to go through. And kind of like the process that he's speaking about when he says like vessel and light. So light would be that energy, that care, that love, that and even just capacity for life. And vessel would be the dogs or the human beings' capacity to receive that and then to share it. And it's something that we all are growing our capacity for. And sometimes if we're not conscious about it, life will give us that capacity in different ways, you know, because we can go through things. We all know this. You go through things. I know for myself, I went through great loss and grief, but now I have a greater capacity for empathy for people who are going through grief and an understanding of what it's like, for example, to have a loved one in the ICU and to kind of, you know, so now I have kind of like a vessel about that, you know, about loss and grief, right? Because I've gone through it. So I have kind of a capacity to be able to empathize, and also I've also grown my ability to move myself forward after, you know, seeming devastation or after feeling, you know, flattened by life. I've grown a different capacity because I went through that to be able to, a greater vessel, I would say, for, you know, whatever it is that you gain from the experience. So I just kind of wanted to explain those terms and like kind of this spiritual concept. And I'm sure that, you know, if you, these terms are from the Kabbalah. So, you know, I'm not a Kabbalah teacher, but I really recommend that if anybody wants to learn more about light investing, you check out, you know, The Power of Kabbalah, which is an amazing book, or you go online and just get some books and start learning, you know, because we're
Kabbalah.com.
we're Kabbalah.com. There's classes. We're talking like very, you know, surface level and throwing these terms out, but if you really wanted to learn for yourself, it's something that you kind of want to reach out for and go through your own process.
Right. And this basically carried me throughout my challenges, throughout my journey, like these understandings that I learned in through Kabbalah, these understandings that this challenge might look now very bitter and very, it's difficult, it's challenging, but it has like something good in it. And then I saw also how things turned around, how things turned from being bitter in the beginning to sweet. But through this understanding, in the beginning, I did not expect that something good would come out from a very challenging situation. But because I understand that, for example, I would grow my capacity, my skill set, or my ability to love or to receive love or to understand life is growing in this moment, I understood that the pain in this moment will turn around at some point to something sweet. And all these understandings I didn't have in the group. The basic mindset was on hatred, on blaming other people, on things like this. So suddenly all this emptiness in this consciousness got understanding and awareness about myself and about the world that helped me to understand processes that I would usually skip, because in the group I would skip all the process. I would skip growing my capacity for receiving love, sharing love, and would stay in a certain level where I didn't change.
Right. I mean, it's so crazy because you say that, and I mean, it's interesting because I feel like each one of us in our own process, like when we're confronted with a challenge, we have a choice. Am I going to somehow find a way to take responsibility for my own feelings about the situation and take responsibility for me, for this challenge, and to find what it is that I need to open in myself or grow in myself? Or am I going to, especially when you're in relationship, or am I going to blame the other person, blame the situation, blame the circumstance, you know? So obviously the situation that you had was a very extreme example, but it's just very interesting because I feel like we're all confronted with obstacles and challenges where we can decide to take responsibility for ourselves and our growth or not.
And coming back to Kabbalah a bit is, I just wanted to explain that mostly we focus on the target, right? We focus on the light, we focus on the love, we focus on what we want to achieve in life. But Kabbalah is actually is not the study about the light. It doesn't really study anything about the light. It only studies how the vessel, our capacity, our being, our soul can grow our ability. It's more the study of the receiving part. So on the receiving part, we are learning what we have to do, which responsibility we have to do, and then to receive more light. It's like the light wants to give, like in Kabbalistic terms, the light wants to give all the time, endlessly. It doesn't stop. But we as vessels, we as human beings, we as souls, we have this limited capacity. So it's our ability to grow this more. And then when we have the challenges, when we're facing the challenges, we are all confronted with, it's not fair. Suddenly we don't see the light. We don't see anything that is good in this situation. We don't understand how this can be good for our growth, good for our life, how this unfair situation is now benefiting us, or we want to bypass it. We just want to skip it. We're going to the chocolate, we're going to whatever, we're going to blaming mode, and we're escaping all the growth process. And when we turn this around, then we see the actual blessings of turning the negativity around and finding this true essence of ourselves.
Yeah. It's amazing because I was reading like today just a story of about Helen Keller. She was blind, and so she had a natural handicap, right? But in the end, it was her, because she was blind, she became very instrumental in the dissemination and the creation of Braille, which has benefited, millions of people since then who are facing blindness. So you can say, it's just an incredible story of somebody who took their handicap and they were able to use it and the situation, and they were able to kind of embrace that situation for the benefit of so many people. So I wanted to ask you one more question, which is, just in terms of more of like becoming, now that you're like also an Orthodox Jew, and you're able to, write Torahs, you're a scribe. How was it for you to learn Hebrew? Was it difficult? What was that process? That part of your process of kind of coming into a greater capacity? How was it just to learn the language?
The language, I learned to read the language a few years back, and that wasn't so difficult. Now speaking it is a completely different story, because I felt Hebrew is a language that is very much connected to your soul, because it's very connecting the upper worlds with your soul and bringing a lot of light. It's a very unique language, but speaking it, like I almost felt like that I need to transform internally even more and more in order to connect to the language. It was very challenging for me to use this, to choose again. It's another level of choosing the light, choosing the positivity, choosing something like sharing. It's another level to use through the language, because it's very powerful what we're using. When we're using words and that we speak, we are manifesting a lot. So instead of manifesting all the negativity, it's cleansing our mind, it's cleansing our system that through speaking. And when we're using such a powerful language as Hebrew, we have to cleanse ourselves. So for me, I'm taking twice a week courses, but it's challenging for me. I need it in stages. It doesn't come, although I'm talented to learn the language, I find it very hard.
Wow. It's incredible. And you also do like speaking engagements, right? You do speaking engagements with different Jewish groups, and
yeah.
How is
actually
that your story? How do you deal with? I'm sure you deal with judgment from people sometimes, and
I see that speaking to groups with Jewish background or non-Jewish is kind of a way for me to give back to others, because I received so much by being in an environment, a very positive and supportive environment. I see this as my opportunity to give back. So I don't force it to speak. I just accept usually the invitations. And but I find it always inspiring because each speaking engagement brings about something completely different, brings about different questions and different aspects, different layers, and also different new stages in my life. And it happened also to inspire others because obviously they're not neo-Nazis and trying to become Jewish, but they're facing some issues in their life where they find some inspiration from the journey that I went through. So I spoke to groups in the UK, in the US, in South America, people coming to Israel, and I'm meeting them. And I spoke in Poland, and it's always something special that is happening.
It's incredible. I'm sure that you're helping many, many people. You know, anti-Semitism is something that's, you know, still very palpable in the world. Even if people are not in neo-Nazi groups, you know, it exists in the consciousness, and it's so powerful for people to hear your story and to connect with this idea of transformation, this idea of being able to address one's darknesses within, to address hatred that's inside of us, and to be able to change it and to become a different person and to live and be more love-filled and happy, etc. You know, all of the positive things. I'm so sure that your story and just your being who you are and what you've gone through is going to bring a lot of light to this world and to bring a lot of awareness to people, you know, because people tend to think like, oh, you know, neo-Nazi, and it's true, neo-Nazi, it's like, it's so bad, right? But where are we addressing our own hatreds, our own biases, our own prejudices that exist, and perhaps, you know, on a lesser scale within ourselves?
It also shows that the hatred, we cannot really stop it by a law or by a prison or even by weapons or something. I think the real transformation of the world and people has to come through an internal transformation of inspiration, obviously, but also like showing other people how they can transform their negativity by being example and supporting them in their work. Because eventually we want that everyone is making this choice to transform their own negativity by learning, by understanding that someone outside a certain situation is never the cause for any misfortune or any unfair situation or something, that everyone has a responsibility, and that we can learn to take responsibility in our life, which I didn't do back then. I didn't take responsibility for my actions. I find it still tough in many situations to take the responsibility. And but I learned way more, and it benefited me so much. And I believe that we can only transform this negativity when we help other people to do something similar.
Yes. And when you were speaking, what just came in was this idea from Spider-Man when he says, you know, with great power, like Peter Parker, the uncle says to him, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. Because we don't only want to focus on taking responsibility for that negativity, but to understand that each one of us is so incredibly powerful within ourselves. Our consciousness is so powerful. We are like these infinite beings in human form. And a lot of times we tend to forget that. And we think that our reality is dependent on some person, on some government, on some, and yes, those things influence us. But each one of us has this power inside to change our belief systems, to, you know, release, you know, old energies, shame, guilt, etc., and to find ourselves in a different universe just from working from within. And that's what I'm so passionate about giving people a way and tools and ways to do that for themselves. Because each one of us is like Spider-Man, you know, with great power and we have great responsibility. And, you know, it's like you said, it's always easy. And I say that and I'm like, well, I probably have a lot of places where I need to take more responsibilities. Who am I to really be saying that? But it's true. It's true. We're all so much more powerful than we know. And, I love that quote. I think it's, I'm not sure who it is. That, we all know much more than much more than you think you do, you know?
Right.
Don't underestimate the power of yourself and your soul, consciousness, and your heart.
I think, sorry. I think from my journey, we can take an example of seeing our influence on other people. I think we all would agree that it's way easier to see the negative influence in others than the positive influence, right? Sometimes we do positive actions and we wonder, but do I really affect other people? Do I really help other people with this? And it's hard to see sometimes. It's hard to see that our positive action is creating protection for other people, not to create negative actions, or is giving them some uplift or some happiness. And we don't see this happiness because we don't see where we are sharing to. It's like endless. We're sharing to something, somewhere, to someone, and we don't see the results. But in the negative way, it's very easy to see. And maybe the negative way can be an inspiration for the positivity. Because when we see a neo-Nazi, when we see a terrorist, when we see any negative person, one person is enough to scare a whole country, to scare a whole town, to scare a very big group of people. And he is able, or she is able to influence in a negative way on a big scale. So if we turn this around, this is the same effect of our positive actions. So our actions can affect a whole country, a whole town, a whole big community. We won't see it naturally. We won't see all the positive effects, but the same like the negative person. He doesn't see how a person is now scared in his home to leave the house because there is a terrorist attack in the city or something, or there's a group marching through the street. He doesn't see this effect, but we all notice it very much. But it's true in the same way in the positivity. So maybe this inspires us when we see the negativity, how big our influence is to many people around the world that we don't see, but our influence is there. And to go deeper and to do more actions of transformation.
It's so true, and it's so powerful. And just one last point, which thinking about when you were speaking, because you mentioned in the beginning that you kind of came into this hate group via music, right? The music was so influential. Music is like a vibration. It's something that's a little bit like it's I'm trying to think of the quote, but it's like, I think it's Leonard Cohen, is like an amazing quote of music, being able to connect us to different things. And so you were influenced by this music to go into the darkness, right? Then there's like the songs of like John Lennon, Imagine, or, other music that's just really uplifting, that can connect us to our soul. And it's similar to what you were saying, like our we can be influenced to the negative or to the positive, and
Right.
just be aware of the things that we take in, and the things that we content that we take in, and the food that we take in, and everything that we take in can influence us to the positive or to the negative. And just to encourage people to obviously listen to the music that brings you love. I like to listen to chanting, from India, different chants that are awakening energies in the body, positive energies.
Right.
Us is great. I'm not going to go into all my favorite music, but there's a reason
Also to
I put it on in the background, because you can feel the vibration, you can feel it elevating you, and it's so powerful.
Right. And also to choose the environment, because back then when I heard the music, I had the choice to choose I had the choice. I could leave the group and I could say, this music is not for me, or this is nothing that I want to support. But for me, being in the group and being in this environment was my choice. It was not that I was victim to or something. I chose it because I felt being in this group was safer for me, was cool, was like I had something from it. And later on, I was lucky enough to make the choice to turn this around and to be in a positive environment with all the work that it required and all the changes that it required. But choosing our environment is something super, super important. And as much as we choose what you said, like which food we take in, which music we listen to, which messages we are listening to on social media, or even from people that we're surrounding ourselves with.
Yeah, it's so important to be so intentional about it, because there's so much that we take in subconsciously. You know, even you go on your phone and there's these subliminal subconscious messaging like, oh, I need to look like that in order to be accepted and to be beautiful enough and so that I can be loved. I mean, we could really go into a whole nother subject, but just because there's so many forces that are always trying to bring us away from our true power, it's so important to really be intentional, I think, about all of the things that we decide to take in. And whatever they say, you know, you're like the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most, or something like that, in terms of environment. But anyway, Yonatan, thank you so much for joining me. We're already an hour in. Is there anything else that you feel you want to share and leave people with here tonight, today, wherever you are?
Just like to have courage, you know, to have courage about yourself, to be brave, to face all the difficulties that each one of us is going through, and to never give up, and to always keep searching, to keep pushing, and to look for answers, because the answers are always there, and to believe that even the darkest points in our life, there is just around some motivation and some hope, and that everything, as much as we go down the hill, we just need to turn around. Karen said, whenever we go in the wrong direction, all we have to do is turn around. There's not much. We had the strength to go in the wrong direction. We have the strength to go in the right direction.
So powerful. Karen is the one that he mentioned. Karen was the founder and the spiritual director of the Kabbalah Center until her passing in 2020. She was a great spiritual teacher, my spiritual teacher as well. And so that's who he was quoting there, that you know, there's always a way through the positive. You know, sometimes you feel like you're stuck, and how do I get past this? How do I overcome this challenge? There's always a way through for you.
Right.
It may just take a little bit of a little or a lot of digging, of reaching for help, of finding a way, you know, of really extending ourselves and really making that effort. Sometimes we're like, oh, I've made enough effort. No. There's more inside of you. There's more inside of us. And sometimes the universe just wants us to draw it out so that we become, you know, the person that we can be, you know, that we have the capacity to be. So each one of us challenged in our own ways, because we each have different capacities. But anyway, thank you so much depth.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to share.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. It was very special. Thank you.